Chapter 251, A Fierce Obstacle. While looking at the sheep-pigs in front of her, Xian suddenly remembered what she had said before and replied, "Okay then, Zhang Han, I'll show you my cooking skills tonight." "Alright, I'm looking forward to your performance." Zhang Han smiled and said, "Oh, is Miss able to cook?" Suyu asked in surprise. "A little bit," said Xian. Although she felt somewhat guilty, she was still reluctant to admit to her poor cooking skills. "You're awesome." Suyu gasped in admiration. "Unlike me, I can only make instant noodles. I don't cook much either. He never allows me to do anything in the kitchen. He is afraid that I'm too delicate and that my skin will be easily irritated by the smoke and soot." Xian glanced at Zhang Han while speaking. "Ha, Mr. Zhang cares about you so much. That's so kind of him. Unlike my husband, he always wants me to learn to cook." Suyu could not help laughing. "I think it's good to be able to cook, Suyu. You should stay and taste the dishes I cook." After she finished speaking, Xian looked at Zhang Han and said, "I need a piece of streaky pork, some lettuce, spicy cabbage, garlic, and a box of Korean spicy sauce for this evening." "Okay, since you want to cook streaky pork, we'd better kill a sheep-pig," Zhang Han said after thinking for a while. "A pig, won't it be too much?" Xian asked doubtfully. "No." Zhang Han shook his head and said, "I'll leave the streaky pork for you and roast the trotters. The two girls like this dish very much. The remaining pork can be used to make sausage and I'll ask Zhao Feng to take the useless parts back." "Oh, okay." Xian nodded her head. "Mr. Zhang, how much does a sheep-pig cost?" Suyu suddenly asked. She also intended to buy one, not for herself, but for her parents who were living in Shenzhen. "I don't know." Zhang Han shook his head and casually said, 36 sheep-pigs cost less than 4 million yuan. Are they easy to buy?" Suyu asked another question. "I'm not sure." After thinking about it again, Suyu stopped asking questions and sighed with emotion. A group of curly sheep-pigs cost 4 million yuan, and there was a herd of Kobe beef cattle mixed in with the other livestock on Mount New Moon. Therefore, she estimated that the value of this place was over 30 million yuan. However, she did not know that Mount New Moon could not be measured in money anymore. On the other side, at the end of the street, back in the center of New Moon Bay where Zhang Han's restaurant was located, the bidding for the CBD building was about to begin. The auction was set up so some powerful companies could bid 3 days later using a closed bidding method. That was to say, no one knew how much their opponents bid. Since the auction price was confidential before the announcement, the companies fought with not only money, but also contacts. The building looked very average, with glass on the outside and nice facilities inside. With the addition of the 5-story building nearby, the range of possible businesses that could be opened in this building was very broad, including hotel, catering, entertainment, and so on. Moreover, the square also attracted more traffic. It was also absolutely attractive to investors as it had a lot of room for operation. "Mr. Zhao, please." After a total of 6 cars parked in the parking lot, the door of the limo in the middle opened. At that point, a bald man in his 40s saluted from inside, then spoke to Zhao Feng. "Okay." Zhao Feng did not bother pretending to be polite and directly got out of the car. After the bald man exited, he said, "Boss Wang is being too polite, just call me by my name." Boss Wang's name was Wang Zilong. Since he was Gu Chen's friend, they called him in to help because only people of high status could join in the auction. Boss Wang, as the boss of an enterprise, was certainly qualified. "Ha, ha, great." Wang Zilong laughed, then took the lead and entered the building. They were followed by Wang Zilong's 3 men. As for Zhao Feng, he did not wait for Xuyong and his companions to get out of the 5 Mercedes. "This place is so nice that I am really tempted, but I don't have enough money." Wang Zilong looked up at the building while walking, and then he shook his head and sighed. He could only draw on less than 400 million yuan. Even if the building was within his means, he would not be able to run it well, let alone the fact that he was not qualified to rent it right now. The starting lease for this auction should be at least 5 years. His men had calculated that it would take about 90 million yuan a year to rent this building at the normal price, which added up to 450 million yuan for 5 years. If he wanted to rent the 5-story building and the square as well, he had to pay more than 500 million yuan. 500 million yuan was only the rent. If he intended to run the business, including restaurants, entertainment, catering and so on, the investment alone should be at least 700 or 800 million yuan. Moreover, the closed bidding meant the winner would have to pay more than 500 million yuan. The place is indeed good. Zhao Feng glanced around and nodded his head. Zhao Feng was determined to win this spot. Money? His master said that he did not need to care about money, just inform him when it was running out. His words did increase Zhao Feng's confidence. Although Zhao Feng was not like those bosses who had more money than they could spend, he could take advantage of more than 1 billion yuan at will. If it was just a competition with money, then it came down to who was willing to spend more money. On this point, Zhao Feng only felt confident. But this is a closed bid, and there will be a variety of other factors. Therefore, it isn't necessarily true that you will win by having the highest bid. Younger brother Zhao, you'd better be prepared for failure. Looking at Zhao Feng's expression, Wang Zilong could not help but remind him, the bigger the expectation, the bigger the disappointment. There was no need to compete intensely against other bidders for this building since you could invest in whatever you wanted if you had enough money. Okay. Zhao Feng responded and then took the lead as they entered. The place for placing bids was in the conference room on the 9th floor. At the entrance on the 1st floor, in front of the elevator, stood several security guards. Once they saw someone, they would greet them immediately. They entered the conference room and saw about 400 or 500 seats. There were some tables and a few people in suits, definitely official staff, sitting on chairs on the stage. At this point, about a dozen people were sitting on the chairs, while more were standing at the entrance and chatting in small groups. Boss Wang, there you are. Upon spotting Wang Zilong, a small portion of them greeted him with a smile. Wang Zilong also nodded and smiled, then replied, Boss Liu, you're here, so is Boss Ma. Boss Li, long time no see. Didn't you just go abroad recently, Boss Liu? Why are you back so soon? Boss Qiang. Whether they were enemies or friends, businessmen would generally chat with each other for a few minutes with enthusiasm. However, upon seeing Zhao Feng, who was standing shoulder to shoulder with Wang Zilong, one of these people, Boss Liu, curiously said, This gentleman looks unfamiliar. He is one of my friends. Wang Zilong answered with a smile. Oh? It seems that Boss Wang is interested in this property. Boss Liu shook his head and laughed. The implication was that Wang Zilong found an ally to help him compete for this property since he could not win the bid on his own. Ha, ha, ha. Wang Zilong smiled without saying anything. After greeting them, he went to his seat and sat down. Zhao Feng did not speak to anyone either as he did not like these formalities. After sitting down, Wang Zilong glanced around. He got close to Zhao Feng and whispered, Have you seen the rightmost person in the 3rd row? Yes. Zhang Han nodded calmly. He's boss whose available capital reaches at least 1 billion yuan. He's a strong opponent. After he finished saying that, Wang Zilong pointed to the other side and said, Boss Leng, who is as rich as Boss Wu, is definitely a threat. Besides him, there's Boss Liu, the man with grey hair who just passed by, is also a person with high standing. I heard that he was well connected, so you should not underestimate him. Upon hearing what he said, Zhao Feng shook his head gently and said, If only it were an open auction. The closed bidding method had a lot of variables, so he was not sure that he would win. Moreover, this location was so suitable that even Master said it was great. Because of that, he did not want to miss this opportunity. What a nuisance. Zhao Feng sighed inwardly because this type of business was really boring to him. Closed bidding also has its advantages. Isn't it still 3 days before the auction? You can prepare the money and pull some strings. As long as you find someone who is well connected, you will spend much less, Wang Zilong said in a low voice. Sometimes, money was not everything, just like the two words, power and wealth. That was, power came before wealth. While they were speaking, a loud commotion suddenly came from the side entrance, drawing everyone's attention. When Wang Zilong figured out who was coming in, his face changed and he gave a wry smile. My God, why is he here? Who? Zhao Feng's eyes narrowed. There were only 3 people entering the room, of whom the leader was a 45-year-old man with cropped hair. He was dressed in a tang suit, with an oval face, and a hairy beard. His eyebrows were very dark in color, and his temperament revealed that he was naturally a rich person. Beside him sat a tall beautiful woman in black silk with decorative glasses. She held a document in her hand and acted like a secretary. When people saw her outfit, a thought flashed through their minds. The secretary would help the boss deal with affairs, and then the boss would fuck the secretary once he was free. However, the one who attracted Zhao Feng's attention was the man in his 30s on the right, who looked suspicious. His expression revealed that he looked down upon all the people present and was somewhat arrogant, judging by his pace. However, Zhao Feng realized that he was a martial artist. His footsteps were very light and the distance between his strides was moderate, which was suitable for him in case he had to take action. More importantly, Zhao Feng sensed danger from him. What did this mean? It meant that this person was a martial artist who was likely to be stronger than Zhao Feng. There was no denying that this person must be very powerful since he was accompanied by someone like this when he was out. At this point, before Wang Zilong answered, many bosses in front of the door began flattering him. Chairman Liu, you actually came in person. Hello, Chairman Liu, we are now nervous and uncertain since you came here. It is not uncertain, so much as hopeless. Chairman Liu came in person. Forget it, I don't have any hope for this spot now. They chatted enthusiastically, but the middle-aged man surnamed Liu did not say anything. He smiled lightly and nodded in response, then walked directly to the seat in the middle of the first row and sat down. He was not reserved, but these people did not arouse his interest in talking with them. His name is Liu Qingfeng. At this moment, Wang Zilong sighed and said, as long as he bids, no one else will have a chance. Isn't it a closed bid? Zhao Feng asked. No matter what kind of bid it is, this property belonged to him the second he arrived here in person, Wang Zilong said while giving him a wry smile. He has more than 20 billion yuan in available capital and is worth more than 60 billion yuan. He's a business tycoon in South Island, whose assets are spread all over the country. He has vigorous industries in Shanghai and Linhai, involving real estate, entertainment, science and technology, transportation, and so on. Besides that, he is involved in many other enterprises. More importantly, his contacts are utterly terrifying. Furthermore, as long as he pulls some strings, this auction won't exist and the land will definitely be given to him. He came here in person because he feels like such a small matter is not worth pulling strings. Really? Zhao Feng froze, and then shook his head helplessly. He was indeed a fierce obstacle. Chapter 252, Fake Mustard. Younger brother Zhao, you don't know much about business. Wang Zilong sighed and looked at Liu Qingfeng with great admiration, then said, although there are a lot of businessmen, true elites are rare. Apart from the enterprise chain of distinguished families, there are few people who are as successful as Mr. Liu is. Besides, he has a good arrangement wherever he goes because he possesses great power. Oh. Zhao Feng glanced at him and flatly said, I'm here to bid, not to meet people. Younger brother Zhao, take my advice. Wang Zilong earnestly said, you'd better give up bidding on this property. He is stronger than everyone here, so you don't have the ability to stop him. It will indeed be a disaster if he is annoyed. After all, business is war without bullets. All right, you don't need to say any more than that. After hearing what Wang Zilong said, Zhao Feng frowned and gave a bland response. I don't need to care about what others think. The word others probably referred to people other than the members in his master's family. Zhao Feng had been surprised at the beginning, but he didn't even change his expression this time. He had money and was a man of influence. So what? My master is a cultivator. In his eyes, everyone here was as insignificant as ants. All right. Wang Zilong gave a wry smile and did not say any more. Under everyone's gasps of amazement, this auction was about to begin. The man on the stage, who was sitting in the main position, went up to the microphone and coughed softly. When everyone looked over, they noticed that the man was looking at Liu Qingfeng with a vague feeling. First of all, welcome to everyone who is participating in this auction. This building was built 10 years ago and now. This man started by making an opening speech, introducing the origin and current situation of the building, then explaining the reason for this auction. They were relocating. After he finished speaking, the man clapped his hands and said, "Before the auction begins, I have something to announce. Today, you'll conduct a closed bid. In a moment, the staff will issue an application form and answer all your questions. The result will be announced in 3 days. Well, let's start." The man nodded to several people who were next to him, and then they waved and beckoned more than 10 staff members to walk to the bidders who were sitting on the lower side with application sheets in their hands. Upon hearing what he just said, all the bidders went into an uproar. They had not expected to bid directly today, which caught them by surprise. Younger brother Zhao, look. Wang Zilong shook his head and sighed softly. This is the effect brought by Liu Qingfeng. Chairman Liu, it's impossible for you to bid against him and win. Not really. Zhao Feng commented, then chuckled and narrowed his eyes. Liu Qingfeng was a man of substance and really awesome, so what? No matter what was done, he would never give in. Even if his opponents were more powerful than Liu Qingfeng, Zhao Feng would still strive for success. He could lose, but he would not give up. This was who he was in the truest sense. Fine. Wang Zilong shook his head while laughing and did not say anything. After all, as a layman, younger brother Zhao knew too little about the business. A few moments later, a staff member walked over to them and handed them an application form, then explained it. Hello, Boss Wang, please fill out this form. Okay. Wang Zilong took a pen and began to fill it out. After completing the form, Wang Zilong stared at the last line, and then asked while filled with doubt, do we need to pay in advance today? Yes, you have to pay 1/3 of your bid in advance today, and the result will be announced in 3 days. If you don't win, we'll refund your money back to you, the staff member explained with a smile. Wang Zilong frowned slightly and glanced at Zhao Feng, then he leaned over and whispered, the advance payment is 1/3 of the bid. So you have to pay 1/3 of the price you offer today. Zhao Feng froze for a while and felt awkward. Younger brother Zhao, is there a problem? After a pause, Wang Zilong asked, I only have a little over 100 million yuan now. Zhao Feng said in a low voice, however, several billion yuan will be transferred into my account in 2 days. Oh. After thinking for a moment, Wang Zilong smiled and said, younger brother Zhao, how much are you going to bid? I can lend you up to 100 million yuan right now. He was not afraid that Zhao Feng would renege on the debt. The reason he promised to lend him the money was because Zhao Feng was likely to fail since Liu Qingfeng was here. Therefore, the money would come back to his account, perfectly intact. If Zhao Feng was lucky enough to win, he still wouldn't care about the money since he could take part in the building project if Zhao Feng failed to repay the debt. It was undeniable that whatever decision he made, he would not lose, so he directly took initiative to lend him money at this point. Thank you so much, Boss Wang, I'm in your debt. Zhao Feng nodded his head. After discussing for a while, he finally determined the bidding price of 600 million yuan and paid the 200 million yuan. While he was handing in the money, Liu Qingfeng, who had been in front of him, got up and left. Several people who were responsible for this auction, who were sitting on the stage, saw him off with a wide smile. Zhao Feng's heart sank slightly when he saw this scene. It would be really difficult for him to win this auction. Meng Meng and Wang Yihan had a great time in Mount New Moon all afternoon. At about 5 o'clock, they returned to the restaurant. Because Zhao Feng needed to bid in the afternoon, he arrived late to fetch the sheep pig. The diners, therefore, could only enjoy egg fried rice and noodle soup for dinner. At about 7 o'clock, he brought several pieces of streaky pork and trotters over. They waited for another half an hour since a few diners were still eating. Boss's wife, there's no one downstairs. Zhao Feng went upstairs and said, "Let me start cooking." Xian smiled, and then she stood up and walked downstairs. When she was halfway there, she found Zhang Han still sitting on the sofa and coaxing Meng Meng, so she said, Zhang Han, come here, I can't find the seasonings. Zhang Han got up and followed her. The two of them walked downstairs, followed by Zhao Feng. Xian looked back and said, "You can also rest upstairs for a while, just leave the dinner to me." "Okay." Zhao Feng nodded with a smile and walked back to the room. At this moment, only Zhang Han and Xian were in the kitchen on the first floor. "Since the ingredients are all ready, I'll start cooking. Put the chili sauce, pepper, salt, and white sugar here." Xian pointed to the side of the chopping board. After that, she washed her hands in the basin, then dried them and picked up a knife from the knife block. She elegantly picked up a piece of streaky pork and put it on the chopping board. Then she pressed against the pork with her left hand and held the knife with her right while moving back and forth, sawing at the steak. "Let me do it." After putting the seasonings in place, Zhang Han walked toward Xian. "All right, just cut it." Xian did not turn down his offer. Instead, she directly made room for him because the piece she had cut was somewhat thick. "I need thin slices of pork. It isn't very easy to cut as it hasn't quick frozen." Xian, like a newlywed wife, stood by and reminded him with her beautiful unblinkingly eyes fixed on the pork on the chopping board. Under her clear gaze, Zhang Han's hand, which held the knife, began to move. Dang, dang, dang. A consistent and repetitive sound was heard, a unique sound that belonged in the kitchen and was filled with its own kind of charm. At least, in Xian's view, Zhang Han stood tall at this moment. "You're so awesome." No, wait. After watching for a few seconds, Xian suddenly realized that something was wrong. Once she saw Zhang Han stop cutting, she picked up a piece of pork with chopsticks while distressed and said, "It's too thin, it will be easy to singe while roasting." The pork slices were as thin as snowflakes, to the point where they were even somewhat transparent. It was no exaggeration to say that they could be cooked in 1 second in a hot pot. "How thick do you need them to be?" Zhang Han smiled and asked. 5 times thicker than that." After thinking for a while, Xian said, "Okay." Zhang Han's hand moved again. The clang of the knife permeated the kitchen once again. Xian's attention gradually switched from the pork to Zhang Han's cheeks. He was a handsome man with an angular face that was filled with masculinity, so Xian could not help being absent-minded as she looked at him. "How many slices do you want?" When Zhang Han finished cutting 2 pieces of streaky pork, he turned to ask, "Oh." Xian suddenly came back to her senses, but she felt a little flustered at this point. She stared at the pork on the chopping board and said, "How many people are there in all?" 5 adults and 2 kids, Zhang Han answered doubtfully. "So cut another one." After a pause, Xian said, "Okay." Zhang Han took another piece of streaky pork and began to cut it. "I'll peel the garlic." Xian pursed her lips, and then she took 3 cloves of garlic and began peeling them. Zhang Han was busy cutting the pork while she was peeling the garlic. They were like an affectionate couple cooking together in the kitchen. "Do we look like a loving couple?" Xian felt a little shy, and she could not help secretly glancing at Zhang Han a few times. But he was indeed an idiot. He simply immersed himself in cutting the pork. By the time he finished cutting the pork, Xian had also accomplished her task. Half of this garlic should be cut into slices and the remaining garlic needs to be mashed, Xian said. After that, she stepped aside, then took out a small basin and put all the pork in it. She added Korean chili sauce, a little pepper, and white sugar. After the minced garlic was ready, Xian stirred it well with a pair of chopsticks. Okay, we just need to wait a little while and we can roast it. Xian clapped her hands and said with a smile, "You look so beautiful when you smile." Zhang Han whispered while staring at Xian's eyes. "Really?" Xian's face turned red and her voice became softer. "I thought you were a cool beauty before, but you're even better now. Your smile is especially beautiful." "A cool beauty, am I? I laugh sometimes when I'm on the shows," Xian said while confused. "You're beautiful after all." Zhang Han smiled, then began to roast the trotters. Several minutes later, he put the pork slices on the baking tray, then roasted them for 25 minutes. After that, dinner was ready. They went downstairs and sat at the round table. "You should roll it in this way. Put a slice of roast meat on a piece of lettuce, add a small piece of spicy cabbage and 2 slices of garlic, then put another slice of pork on the top and pack them with the lettuce," Xian said as she demonstrated. She rolled up one. When she was about to hand it to Meng, she noticed that Zhang Han had already handed over a small barbecue lettuce roll to Meng. Then he gently said, "Meng, have a try. You should bite it lightly." "I see." Meng accepted it and nibbled at it. "Yum, it's so delicious." After seeing what he did, Xian gave Zhang Han an angry stare because he was good at winning Meng over. She put the barbecue lettuce roll into her mouth and chewed it hard while looking at Zhang Han. After eating this one, Xian did not move. She just stared at Zhang Han with her beautiful eyes. Zhang Han picked up a piece of lettuce, quickly rolled up the second small barbecue lettuce roll, and handed it to Meng again. The third one and the fourth one were both given to Meng as well. "Why does this bastard ignore me?" Xian got angry. She puffed out her cheeks and walked to the kitchen. "I'll get some drinks." When Xian went to the kitchen to fetch drinks, she rummaged for a tube of mustard and walked back to the table with a snort. "Grab a drink, everyone." Xian put the drinks on the table first, then hastily picked up a piece of lettuce, secretly squeezed some mustard on it, and quickly covered it with a slice of pork. After she finished rolling it, she grinned at Zhang Han and handed the meat roll to him, then said, "Honey, I rolled one for you, eat it." Puff middle dot. Zif squirted the cola in her mouth onto the floor. She looked at Xian with a dumbfounded expression. My God! Did elder sister Yan call Zhang Han honey? How fast did their relationship grow? As for Suyu, she smiled and said, "You're so affectionate." That's right, the boss and the boss's wife are truly in love. Zhao Feng did notice Xian's hidden movement, so he held back his laughter as he commented. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han glanced at Xian and smiled gently. He did not take it with his hand, but directly move his mouth close to her. When he ate the meat roll, he inevitably kissed Xian's slender fingers. Xian's hand was a little numb, but her eyes were filled with banter because she was looking forward to his next reaction. She stared at Zhang Han and snorted inwardly. "Since you always ignore me, I'm going to punish you, HMPH. Zhang Han, however, was expressionless. He ate it and smiled at her, then said, "It tastes great this way." Huh? Xian was stunned and confused. So, after a minute, she seized the chance to squeeze some mustard again. This time, the amount was twice as much as the last time. Then she covered it with a slice of pork, rolled it up, and sent it to Zhang Han's mouth, then said, "I'll give you another one. MMM. Zhang Han smiled. He opened his mouth so wide this time that Xian put two of her fingers into his mouth on accident. Xian seemed to be electrified all of a sudden. She drew back her hand at a high speed and stared at Zhang Han with her beautiful unblinking eyes. "What's the matter? Is this mustard fake?" Xian was a bit shocked. Not only did Zhang Han not change his expression, he even enjoyed it. Therefore, Xian found another opportunity and squeezed some more mustard, then covered it with a slice of pork and rolled it up. When she was about to hand it to Zhang Han, "Honey." Zhang Han chuckled and said while looking at Xian, "You should eat some too." "Ah, oh." Xian felt a little stunned. After pondering for a moment, she decided to have a try. If the mustard was fake, she did not need to roll another one for Zhang Han. So, Xian took the meat roll and put it into her mouth. She licked her fingers habitually, then she froze all of a sudden. "Fingers, Zhang Han?" he just. "Did they kiss indirectly?" Xian blushed suddenly. However, as she chewed, the strong spicy taste of mustard spread all throughout her mouth. Yum! Xian's eyes gradually widened, and she quickly pulled out 2 tissues, then she lowered her head and spit out the meat roll. "Oh, oh, oh." Xian's expression made it obvious that she didn't like the taste. She stuck her tongue out and quickly picked up a tin of juice, then gulped it down. Puff, ahem, ahem. Zhao Feng, who witnessed the whole process, almost could not help laughing. As for Zhang Han, although he was expressionless, his smiling eyes completely showed that he was in a good mood. "Honey, what's wrong with you?" Zhang Han said hastily, but when Xian raised her head, she saw the grin in his eyes. She, therefore, reached out her tender hands to pinch Zhang Han's waist. In the meantime, she smiled and got close to Zhang Han's ear. Then she said, "You are so mean. I'll make sure to get my revenge on you." Chapter 253, Go Shopping. Why am I bad? Zhang Han also leaned over to Xian and whispered. As he spoke, a warm gust of air brushed past her ear, which made Xian go limp. "Mph." Xian snorted and quickly stepped back. Her face felt extremely hot, and she did not know if it was because of the mustard or because she was bashful. "You too." Zif constantly sized them up with a playful gaze. After a few seconds, she stopped bantering and began to eat. All her attention was concentrated on dinner. Because of the slice of pork, the flavor of spicy cabbage, and the garlic, the meat roll smelled great. Juice from the lettuce would flow into the person's mouth after the first bite, and then the aroma of the meat would spread out. The pork was roasted well. Even though it was a little overcooked, the fatty meat was not greasy at all. At the same time, the fragrance of lean meat immediately filled their whole mouth, while the spicy cabbage and garlic slices inside the roll contributed to a mixed flavor. With pork as the main ingredient, spicy cabbage and garlic slices, which were a little spicy, as the auxiliary ingredient, its taste improved dramatically. Especially the lettuce even helped remove the greasiness. The whole roll tasted fresh and contained a meat flavor that conquered the stomachs of everyone there. This dish was really simple. It only required the streaky pork, spicy cabbage, garlic slices, and lettuce to be baked for 25 minutes at 200 degrees in an oven. However, because the meat was somewhat overcooked, Meng and Wang Yihan did not eat much. After eating a few rolls, they began to nibble on the trotters. After dinner, at about 9:30, Suya left with Wang Yihan. After tidying up the restaurant, Zhao Feng also left because he had to go to the beach to train his men. Elder sister Yan, I have to go too. Would you like to visit the apartment I'm renting? Zif casually picked up a bag and asked before leaving. No, thanks. Xian shook her head slightly. She glanced at Zhang Han and said, why don't we go for a walk? I ate a lot of meat tonight. Are we going shopping? Meng's eyes lit up. Yes, we're going to go shopping. Zhang Han smiled and said, okay, go shopping, let's go. Meng jumped up on the sofa and stretched out her two small arms towards Zhang Han. Zhang Han picked up Meng, and then they prepared to take a stroll first. They walked along the left side of the street. After 6 or 7 minutes, they arrived at a large shopping mall. The shopping mall was named the new #1 department store, in front of which was a square. There were plenty of people walking around in it, and there were even some places for roller skating on one side. The people who were skating reminded Xian of the scene when she was skating with Zhang Han yesterday and the meaningful event when he carried her in his arms. Ah, come on, I won't stay here and be an eyesore since you aren't paying attention to me. Zif sighed softly, then waved her hands and said, the apartment I rented is in the building that we just passed. I'll go up and tidy it up first. All right. Xian slightly nodded her head. You didn't even try to get me to stay. Oh, I must not be attractive at all, Zif said enigmatically, then turned to leave. Papa, so many people. Mama, look over there, big balloons. Papa, I want to eat ice cream. Meng was in Zhang Han's arms. Upon seeing the ice cream parlor on the first floor, she put her arms around Zhang Han's neck and kissed him on his cheek. Papa will buy one for you. Zhang Han smiled. Zhang Han, did you forget what I told you? Xian stared angrily at Zhang Han. Hey, what did you say? Oh, well, I remember, you said that I shouldn't give Meng whatever she wants. Zhang Han said with his eyes narrowed. Hey, stop. Xian's beautiful eyes gradually widened, and she put on a murderous look. Meng was stunned. She stared on in doubt and said in a childish tone, what did you say, Mama? Nothing. Don't listen to your papa. This bad guy is trying to sow discord. Xian rolled her eyes at Zhang Han angrily. Ha. Zhang Han gave a hearty laugh while striding toward the ice cream parlor with Meng in his arms. Xian stood behind them, then puffed up her cheeks and slightly stamped on the ground, then muttered, bastard. After saying that, she followed after them. If Xian took off her hat and glasses at this point, her face would be exceedingly fascinating and charming. Zhang Han entered the ice cream parlor and ordered a small ice cream. Go ahead. Zhang Han handed the ice cream to Meng. Meng took it joyfully and kissed Zhang Han on the cheek, then said happily, Papa, you're the best. Take a bite of it first. Take a small bite. Okay, I'll take a small bite. Zhang Han smiled. Because of its small size, he did not take a big bite, he just bit off the tip of the ice cream. Mama, have a try too. Meng handed the ice cream to Xian. I won't eat any. Xian noticed that Zhang Han had eaten the tip of it. No, Mama also needs to take a bite. Meng insisted that the ice cream tasted great and she wanted Mama to have a try. Meng, go ahead, Mama doesn't want to. Before she finished speaking, Xian realized that Meng was somewhat unhappy, so she hesitated. Anyway, this is not the first time. Mama, just take a small bite. Xian smiled and approached the ice cream to take a bite on the side. Then she glanced at it and found that she inevitably kissed indirectly with Zhang Han again. This is really... Xian was speechless and coy at the same time, so she silently followed Zhang Han into the mall. After entering the shopping mall, Xian completely became a new person. She was surrounded by a slight aura of coldness and gave the impression of a strong woman. Let's go to this Versace store. When they passed a high-end brand-named store, Xian took the lead and walked in. Hello ma'am, hello sir, how may I help you? Her shopping guide greeted them with a wide smile. She was very enthusiastic because she noticed that Xian carried a Hermes crocodile handbag worth hundreds of thousands of yuan, and what she was wearing was from internationally famous brands. Although Zhang Han's clothes were relatively inferior, they were still high-end brands. As a senior shopping guide, once she saw them, she knew that they were wealthy. I'm just looking. Xian gave a bland response. Okay. The guide nodded, and then followed them. This bag looks good. Xian picked up a leather bag and sized it up. My lady, you do have good taste. This is Versace's latest crystal tiara handbag, designed by Master Ale. Because of the high cost, The price is 78,000 yuan. Pack it up. After saying that and putting the bag back, Xian directly walked to the menswear department. Okay, okay. The guide happily wrote it down on the list. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Please pack these up according to his measurements. Xian pointed at several jackets. Okay. Do you want to try on clothes first? The guide's heart beat loudly as she asked. No, thanks. I'll head to the checkout counter now. Xian replied crisply. Go to the checkout counter, buy them. Meng held up her left arm and cheered while eating ice cream. What size do you wear, sir? While leading the way to the front desk, the guide asked. 2XL. Zhang Han wanted to laugh. Xian was so straightforward when she bought clothes, he liked her more and more. Okay, the women's bag and 4 sets of menswear comes to a total of 156,000 yuan. Card or cash? Card. Xian took out a golden bank card from her wallet. After paying by credit card, Xian said, please send the clothes tomorrow morning too. After they left the store, Xian took the lead and rushed into the Armani store. She selected a total of 6 or 7 suits, casual clothes, and shirts, which cost a total of 250,000 yuan. At this moment, Zhang Han finally realized how horrible women were when they were shopping. That's enough. I don't need so many clothes. Zhang Han smiled and said, we should buy some more sportswear for roller skating. Xian snorted. In fact, she would not have shopped so hastily if the mall was not closing soon. After she finished speaking, Xian took the lead and walked forward. Let's go shopping. Although Meng did not select any clothes, she was also addicted to joining in the fun. After buying some sportswear, Xian glanced at the sign on the escalator and said, let's go to the 3rd floor. I think you need a watch. A man must wear a watch when he is out. Xian glanced at Zhang Han and headed for the escalator. Zhang Han shook his head with a smile, and then followed her up with Meng in his arms. He did not say anything since he did enjoy the feeling of receiving stuff from Meng's mother. It made him feel very warm inside. Please tell me about this watch. At the Patek Philippe store, when Xian saw this men's watch, her eyes slightly brightened. Madam, this is Patek Philippe's 5271 P001 watch, with various complex functions from the chronograph series. It's a very high-end watch with automatic mechanical movement, a round shape, an alligator skin watch band, a black dial, and a platinum case. A tall beautiful guide introduced it eloquently. It's 41 mm in size and has a versatile style. It has a transparent bottom and a fold-over locking clasp. Besides that, the face is made of sapphire crystal glass while its bezel is made of platinum, and the watch needles are like willow leaves. It is very in line with this sir's detached temperament. I seldom wear a watch now. Zhang Han glanced at Xian and said. He did not pay much attention to what he wore now. As long as the clothes were clean and casual, he would be satisfied. Moreover, he did not care about watches and belts either. After all, his horizons had already expanded beyond this level. I'll buy this one. Before Zhang Han finished speaking, Xian directly replied. He certainly needed to dress well since he was Meng's father after all. But when she arrived at the checkout counter and found out that it cost 1.96 million yuan, Xian slightly pursed her red lips. She had not been so extravagant in years. Let me see your hand, Xian said to Zhang Han with the watch in her hand. Zhang Han obediently held out his hand. After helping him wear the watch, Xian smiled with satisfaction. It looks great. A gentleman had to wear decent clothes, watches, belts, and leather shoes. Thank you. Zhang Han gave Xian a meaningful look. In truth, what he really wanted to say was, thank you for giving me a home. Chapter 254, It is inadvisable for you to disagree with me. This is the first time you've thanked me. I didn't expect Child Zhang to be so easily satisfied, Xian said in a rare mischievous tone. Ha, don't call me Child Zhang. I was young and ignorant in those days. Zhang Han gave a hearty laugh, then looked at Xian softly and whispered. I may not even blink if someone gives me a priceless treasure, but I do like the gifts you give me. It has nothing to do with the presents but the person who gives them. Xian's face suddenly turned red when she heard what he said. When she saw the shopping guide who stood a few meters away smiling out of the corner of her eye, she felt bashful. She held out her hand to pull Zhang Han by the sleeve and said while walking out. All right, let's go upstairs. The mall is closing soon, let's go. Zhang Han smiled. As his hand moved, he naturally grasped Xian's tender palm in his hand. Xian gently tried to take her hand back but failed, so she let him hold it. Xian did not talk much, almost to the point of silence. As they moved along, she looked just like a feminine wife who kept pace with her husband. It was about 10:30 when they exited the mall, which was ready to close. However, there were still quite a lot of people wandering in the square inches front of the mall. Shall we go and sit for a while? Zhang Han gestured with his lips and motioned for Xian to look at the bench on the side. He did not gesture with his hand because he did not want to let go. Xian slightly nodded her head submissively. Other people thought they were an affectionate couple because Xian and Zhang Han sat very close to each other on the bench. Meng, the little princess, was also really glad to be accompanied by Papa and Mama. It was said that only after losing something does a person learn to cherish it. Meng had not lost Zhang Han but had never had him. Meng, therefore, subconsciously cherished her Papa and was exceptionally clingy. Even while she was in the square with Xian, the little princess was still in Zhang Han's arms. She would usually hum a song the instant she felt happy, and she was currently singing while shaking her two small arms and head. Let it go, can't hold it back anymore. La la la. As she sang, Meng suddenly saw the vague image of a Ferris wheel in the distance. She knew that the ocean park, which was especially interesting, was here, and she suddenly remembered something. At this point, she quickly stopped singing, then looked up at Zhang Han while pouting and said, Papa, hey, didn't you promise me that you would take Big Hi and Little Hi to the amusement park when Mama came back? Yes, just wait for Papa to make the arrangements and then we'll go there. Zhang Han touched Meng's head while smiling. Great, let's go to the amusement park. Meng cheered with great merriment. Wait, Xian said all of a sudden. She gave Zhang Han a strange look and said, I'm fine with you going to the amusement park, but why are you taking Day and Little Hi? Hey, Mama, you're so silly. We're going to the amusement park with Big Hi and Little Hi so they can ride the Ferris wheel and play lots of games. Meng said solemnly. After hearing what she said, Xian gave Zhang Han an angry stare and reprimanded him. Why do you promise her everything? Let her go if she wants, Zhang Han casually replied. No way. Xian shook her head and then looked at Meng while speaking with a persuasive tone. Meng, do you remember what Mama said when we were in San Diego at SeaWorld? What? Meng was a little confused. She was going to pout because she had a vague feeling that her Mama was likely to refuse. Mama told you the meaning of rules. Nothing can be accomplished without norms or standards, that is to say, you should obey the rules wherever you go. Only when you become a civilized and sensible child will people truly like you. Pets aren't allowed in the amusement parks, so Day and Little Hi cannot go. Even if your Papa promises you, the staff will not agree, Xian said seriously to Meng. Meng knew the meaning of Mama's words, so she felt down and pouted her lips, then said with sadness, but I have promised Big Hi and Little Hi, Mama, they'll be sad if they can't go. Tears were about to stream out of Meng's eyes as she spoke. Ouch! Zhang Han got a fright when he saw her tears were already about to flow, so he hastily said, they'll go, they can go, who says they can't go? Meng, since Papa promised you, they will definitely be able to go with you. Really? Although Meng Meng did not burst into tears, she looked pitiful as her eyes glistened with tears. Zhang Han never refused Meng Meng. When he heard Meng Meng's words, he firmly nodded his head and said, "It's true, they can go. Papa will never break his word to you, forever. That's so nice of you, Papa." Meng Meng puckered her lips and kissed Zhang Han on the cheek several times. "Mew, mew, mew, Papa, I love you." This scene totally stunned Xian. What do they mean? Am I the bad guy? They, the father and daughter, are of the same mind. What about me, bastard? Xian got angry. Then she reached out her tender hand and pinched Zhang Han's waist. Ouch! Zhang Han pretended to twist his face with pain. "It's inadvisable for you to disagree with me." Xian pinched him again. Mama, don't bully Papa." Meng Meng said in a worried tone. "A kid without conscience." Xian pursed her mouth and said, "Is only your Papa nice? If I don't agree then you can't go anywhere." Meng Meng froze. She did not understand what her mama meant. After hearing what she said, Zhang Han smiled while staring at Meng Meng and said, "Hurry up and go to coax your mother so she'll promise to let us take Dai and Little Hai to the amusement park." "Really?" Meng Meng's eyes lit up and she quickly threw herself into Xian's arms from Zhang Han's. "Yum, mew, mew, Mama is the best. Mama is the most beautiful. Mew, 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 Mama. Please allow Big Hai Hai and Little Hai Hai to go with us. Please, mew." After facing Meng Meng's persistent requests, Xian finally nodded her head. "Fine, I agree, but it all depends on this idiot." While speaking, she rolled her eyes at Zhang Han, but she was somewhat thankful at this moment. "Fortunately, I came back and moved here, otherwise, Meng Meng would have been spoiled by her doting father. It was his fault for promising Meng Meng such nonsense. Now that she was here, she would take good care of them in the future." However, she unavoidably sighed at the same time. The reasons why Meng Meng was so clingy when it came to Zhang Han was because of all the years of expectation and the fact that blood was thicker than water. The reasons Zhang Han doted on Meng Meng were the same. She was very gratified by Zhang Han's love for Meng Meng, and Meng Meng would be very happy with such a father. After hearing Xian's words, Zhang Han shook his head with a smile, then said, "Rules are made to be broken. There were a lot of rules in the world, which allowed the world would be at peace. Unlike the cultivation world where there were no rules, the people with great strength reigned supreme and everyone else was constantly in danger. But even ordinary people could only live for a few decades, so the rules were not eternal. Bluntly speaking, ordinary people looked at the sky from the bottom of a well, but cultivators looked at the scenery outside of the well. What was a cultivator? A person who looked at the world from the top of the mountain was a cultivator. It was also an artistic concept. Zhang Han, however, knew that he would travel around the world with his family as he wished and become an immortal cultivator. However, upon hearing Zhang Han's detached words, she directly rolled her eyes at him. "What are you talking about?" Xian glared at him several times. But Zhang Han shook his head with a smile and did not give her a response since she would understand sooner or later. As for Meng Meng, she became happy again at this point, waving small arms and singing while being held by Xian. "Ha, ha, ha, let it go, can't hold it back anymore, la la la, let it go." Meng Meng's lovely appearance frequently attracted the attention of the people who passed by. What a lovely child. The eyes of two ladies in their early 20s who passed by suddenly brightened. One of them, a girl with a ponytail, came over with love in her eyes. She handed the balloon in her hand to Meng Meng and said with a smile, "Such a cute girl, I want to give you a small gift." "Ah!" Meng Meng suddenly became bashful. She hid in her mama's arms, secretly looking at the woman in front of her. "No, but thanks." Xian nodded to the woman gently. "It doesn't matter, your daughter is really beautiful, she's the most exquisite and beautiful girl I have ever seen, this balloon is for her," the woman said with a smile. Xian did not refuse again this time. She accepted the string and looked down at Meng Meng to remind her. Meng Meng, what should you say at times like these? Thank you, elder sister. Meng Meng looked up and said shyly. You're so cute, bye-bye, little one. Bye-bye. Meng Meng waved her right hand to bid farewell. The two beauties could not help shaking their heads and chuckling as they left. They both had not expected that they could meet such a lovely little girl while they were shopping. As for Xian, she had gotten used to what just happened. When they had been in San Diego, Meng Meng had attracted some people who came to give gifts every time they went out. A balloon. Meng Meng accepted the balloon from Xian and played with it joyfully. Zhang Han returned to the restaurant with Meng Meng in his arms at 11 o'clock in the evening. He lay on Xian's bed on the second floor to put Meng Meng to sleep first, and then lifted her up and put her on the smaller bed. After greeting Xian, he returned to the second bedroom. Zhang Han took his clothes off and lay on the bed. After that, he took off his watch, cast a glance at it, and then put a happy expression on his face. After putting the watch on the bedside table, Zhang Han slowly fell asleep. Nothing happened during the night. After breakfast the next day, Xian went back to work at the company. As soon as she arrived, she met Xuanhuan, who had been against her the whole time. Yo, Xian, you are back. Ha, ha, ha. I heard that you found someone to beat Director Fu badly. Boss Wu mentioned you during the meeting. Alas, you will be in danger of being fired before you have a chance to return to the entertainment circle. Chapter 255. Sun Ming becomes optimistic now. Xian glanced at Xuanhuan without saying anything, and stepped directly into her office. She's really a joke. Zif did not want to argue with her at the door, so after saying that, she walked forward, following Xian. You. Xuanhuan suddenly became angry, and stamped her foot while looking at them. Why are you so arrogant in the face of disaster? Ha. All the way back to the office, every person they met, looked at Xian in a strange way. There were also groups of people whispering at the side, their expressions showing what they were thinking. Elder Sister Yan. After entering the office, Zif said, perhaps it is difficult to handle the matter concerning Director Fu. What if I ask Meki for the details first? After thinking for a while, Xian said, I'll go alone. Well, I'll wait for you here. Zifeng sat down on the sofa as she spoke. When Xian was about to go out, she pursed her lips and said, Elder Sister Yan, don't put up with people who speak ill of you. You know that brother-in-law will always back you. You can be the boss whenever you want. Xian opened the door, rolled her eyes at Zif, then stepped out of the office with a smile. What Zif said was somewhat reasonable. Xian, who had always been helpless, had been at a point of no return before. But now she could rely on Zhang Han to save her. Xian knocked at the door when she arrived at Meki's office. Come in, please. Xian, you are here, sit down please. When she saw Xian, Meki nodded, smiled and gestured for her to sit. Okay. Xian sat on the chair facing the desk, then said directly, Elder System, I want to ask you what's going on with Boss Wu and Director Fu now? It isn't going well. Meki arranged the files on the table and put them aside. Looking at Xian, she sighed softly and said, Director Fu returned to the company yesterday morning. He had been badly injured and his face was all puffy and swollen. He was very angry with you. In the meeting held in the afternoon, Boss Wu specifically mentioned this matter. After all, it was the first time that an employee had asked someone to beat up the director. How do we solve this problem? Xian's eyes flickered slightly, but she still asked calmly. It's not that easy to settle this. Meki retained a frosty reserve and said, Boss Wu wanted to see you yesterday afternoon, but I told him that you were on leave. Since you can't run from the problem, you'd better go to Boss Wu's office to talk with him and figure out the solution now. I think that you should disassociate yourself with those unknown people. If you failed to handle it, you can ask Child Li for help. He's very sincere towards you. Oh. Xian nodded her head gently, stood up and said, Thank you, Elder System. I'll go and see Boss Wu first. All right. Maki answered, with a smile. After Xian left the office, she shook her head again and sighed softly. Wu Chengdong's office was on the top floor. As the president of the company, he held a high position, and his office was equipped and furnished to the highest standard. 15 minutes after Wu Chengdong's secretary informed him that she was at the door, Xian came into his office. I was in a video conference. Wu Chengdong said with a smile. He stood up and walked to Xian, then gestured gently and said, sit down. Please. Fine. Xian sat on the sofa with an aloof expression, while Wu Chengdong sat next to her. He sized Xian up and said with a chuckle, you're like Helen of Troy, Xian, you're really beautiful. Thank you. Fu Shan filled me in about what happened in Shangjing and that you made some trouble there. However, I quite understand you since you were forced to stay in Shangjing for a long time. In fact, no one will feel comfortable in the face of such a situation, but you are too impatient. Wu Chengdong said kindly. I don't think I was impatient, Xian answered, with a slight shake of her head. You don't? Wu Chengdong smiled faintly and said, I heard that there was something wrong with the contract. But you can discuss it with me. Business cannot be achieved overnight. Once the contract is signed, you will be free for a period of time, and you can go wherever you want. That's true, but everyone knows what they intend to do. Xian looked at Wu Chengdong firmly as she said this. May I ask what is the relationship between those who went to pick you up and yourself? Wu Chengdong asked. I can't talk about it. So you do know them? Wu Chengdong's eyes narrowed and he said, Xian, it is fine if you don't know them, but now you are in for it. What he meant was that if Xian knew them, she would be held accountable. If not, they could continue to negotiate, but she would not have the final say. I can't tell you. Xian responded again. Looking at Xian's cold gaze, Wu Chengdong was stunned, for he had not expected that Xian would ignore his warning. She was indeed taking a tough stance. Let's get to the point. Wu Chengdong smiled and said, the director has talked over the contract personally, with you, but was beaten up violently by people you know. As this thing will have a bad impact, the company will not provide you with any resources for the time being. However, you can handle it yourself. Whoever started the trouble should end it. It is Director Fu and the contract that matters, and I won't ask you for more details. I do indeed think highly of you and you'll be very popular once you go the right way. Oh. Xian gave him a bland response. Was Wu Chengdong advising her to sign the contract, to be with Linji, to profit from the child in Shangjing? If the promise were kept, she would succeed. If not, she would be left out in the cold by the company. Ha, ha. Xian did not bother to say anything at this time. She stood up and said, Boss Wu, I'll go back first. After that, Xian left the room directly. A hint of displeasure flashed across Wu Chengdong's eyes as he watched her departing back. He had a negative view of such wayward entertainers. Loftiness and arrogance were not beneficial to success. Only people who could rise to higher positions would succeed. Not everyone was lucky. There were plenty of people in the entertainment circle struggling to climb to higher positions, at a great price. Wu Chengdong felt the situation was funny at this point. It seemed to be false, but now the scenario was real. The superannuated stars should have prepared themselves to face such a situation. After thinking for a while, Wu Chengdong took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. Child Lin, I just talked with Xian and it looks like she knows those guys. On seeing Xian returning to the office, Zif asked hurriedly. How's it going? What's going on? Not good. Xian had a cold look on her face. She shook her head slightly and said, the company will not provide any resources for the time being unless this matter is handled properly. What? Zif's eyes widened and she shouted, you have obviously been left out in cold by the company. Who gave the word? Why are they handling it in this way? They're so unreasonable. We shouldn't be blamed. I'll look for the old witch. It'll be futile. It was Wu Chengdong who gave the instructions. Xian pursed her mouth gently and said, Boss Wu. Zif was stunned and depressed. Let it go, I can use this time to accompany Meng Meng. Although the end result was not good, Xian found that she did not care much about it. In fact, she even looked forward to staying at home. Expectations? Was it because of Meng Meng or that idiot? Xian had a feeling that it was mostly attributed to Zhang Han. I have no idea when the idiot will officially pursue me. How will he pursue me? Will he become very romantic? Will I agree with what he wants by then? Xian was thinking about this, as she sat in the office. Elder Sister Yan. Hello, Elder Sister Yan, don't be sad, there's still another way. Zif tried to console her. However, before she finished speaking, she saw Xian smiling and heard her saying, let's go and inform Elder System, I'll take the day off. Puff middle dot middle dot middle dot. Zif was totally puzzled. She did not realize what Xian intended to do until she opened the door and left. Oh, my God. Zif shook her head repeatedly, and said with a sigh, love is really scary. The two of them came to Makey's office, but the expectation backfired since Makey did not agree. Besides that, she asked them to be punctual for work and earnestly persuaded them to show their boss their best attitude. Anyway, Xian's thought of going home came to nothing. On the other side of Meng Meng's leisure restaurant, the restaurant was almost empty at about 8:40 a.m. After Zhao Feng cleaned up the restaurant, Zhang Han told him that they planned to go to the amusement park. Then Zhao Feng went directly to handle the logistics. At about 9 o'clock, the Sun family arrived. Sun Ming and Sun's mother walked into the restaurant, carrying a lot of stuff this time. People saw that there were all kinds of small toys or gifts inside as they approached. Uncle Sun is here, so many gifts, are they for Meng Meng? After seeing the toys, Meng Meng stood up on the sofa and asked, yes. Sun Ming put several large bags of gifts on the sofa, with a smile. Why did you buy so many gifts? Zhang Han glanced at them and asked casually, Mr. Zhang, we are here to say goodbye to you this time. Sun Ming said, laughing. Huh? Meng Meng was stunned. She looked at Sun Ming, puzzled, and asked in a childish tone, is Uncle Sun going on a long journey? Yes, we'll be going far away, it's for something good. Sun Donging replied, ha, ha. Sun Ming shook his head, then said with a chuckle, I sold my company, and I recently decided to try a new career. I plan to start a media company to pave the way for Donging as he likes music. One of my friends has a well-established company in North America, and I told him about my idea. He's very enthusiastic and asked me to go over to learn more. Moreover, my wife will be with me on this trip. It was apparent that Sun Ming had become more optimistic after the last incident. Although career was important, it would be worthless if he succeeded without his family. He, therefore, wanted to start a media company and travel with Sun's mother. To start a company to pave the way for his son after coming back, was Sun Ming's new goal now. Hearing his words, Zhang Han smiled and said, that's a good idea. Chapter 256, Clinch the Deal. I'm no longer young, and I want to be happy for the rest of my life. Mr. Zhang, thank you for saving my life. In fact, I'm really reluctant to leave Meng Meng, therefore, I came to visit even though the plane will depart at 1:30 this afternoon. Sun Ming said with a smile. Oh. Zhang Han thought for a moment and said, just stay for lunch then, what do you like? The Sun family was somewhat flattered when they heard Zhang Han's words. In general, if someone was praised by a serious person, who seldom complimented others, he would feel extremely proud and happy. That was, a thing was valued if it was rare. At this point, Sun Ming and his family realized the meaning of that sentiment. I'll enjoy whatever you cook. Sun Ming said, waving his hands repeatedly. You're welcome, tell me what you want to eat and I'll make them for you. Zhang Han said mildly. Sometimes relationships were built in this way. Once a person got along with another who was pleasing to the eyes, he would be much more friendly to that person. Realizing that Zhang Han had asked the second time, Sun Ming did not turn down the offer anymore. After thinking for a while, he said with a smile. I can't wait. My wife prefers cold noodles. Meng Meng likes cold noodles very much too. I really like the one made by Papa. Meng Meng pouted and said, Okay, I'll make cold noodles at noon. Zhang Han touched Meng Meng's head, then said, Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Sun Ming and his family were very moved. On the other side, in front of the ocean park, there was a brand new Mercedes and a brand new Bentley parked in the parking lots. Zhao Feng got out of the Mercedes alone, while Ge Chen stepped down from the Bentley, followed by two men, who walked steadily ahead of him. Did you change your car? As they approached one another, Zhao Feng chuckled and said, Should I call you Boss now? Zhao Feng, it's not advisable for you to make fun of people, face to face. In fact, you can become the boss whenever you want. If so, I will make way for you immediately. Ge Chen jokingly said. Ha, ha, ha. Zhao Feng shook his head, and had a wide smile on his face. He patted Ge Chen on the arm and said, All right, you know I'm not interested in the position and I won't, in the future too. You are actually tough enough to become a boss. Ge Chen sighed lightly, but he inevitably felt relaxed. Ge Chen was not a saint, and he also attached great importance to power and wealth. If Zhao Feng truly wanted to be the boss, he would hold a grudge against him because of this. Zhao Feng had not promised to go against him, and now he managed to succeed by himself. Moreover, he did enjoy and was very intoxicated with the idea of being the boss. Fortunately, Zhao Feng showed no interest in the powers of the underground society at all and wanted to be friends with him still. Besides, it was rare for Ge Chen to follow his heart, after his status grew. Zhao Feng, now I find that Mr. Zhang is really strange. He is actually going to reserve the whole amusement park so that he can bring his daughter there to play. He's indeed a man with great freedom. Ge Chen laughed and said, Great freedom, that's right. My boss does whatever he wants. Zhao Feng replied with a chuckle. Let's get down to business first. Ge Chen said, as he took the lead in walking toward the park. There were a large number of people coming and going in front of the park, but Ge Chen took the route leading directly to the staff entrance. He did not have to say anything. When they were about to approach the entrance, one of his men dialed a number and walked several steps ahead quickly. The doorman, after hearing what the man said on the phone, became attentive and saluted them. At this point, some people in the queue were surprised. It seemed that they were either big shots or people who were familiar with the park management since they did not need to queue. However, judging by their clothes, they were likely to be big shots. They were accustomed to people's curious gazes. Ge Chen said while walking, By the way, is that strong man Mr. Zhang brought the last time? His man? Is he a foreigner and does he live in Hong Kong? He said this casually, as if he was merely curious. However, Zhao Feng was stunned after hearing his question. He answered, He is hardly around, but he makes himself available for my boss. Ge Chen would not have asked these questions in the past, but now, because he cared about his men and matters happening in his own territory, he did. That was to say, he paid more attention to those who were a threat to him or intended to find some powerful allies. I hope that you won't be overwhelmed by power and wealth. Zhao Feng sighed in his mind. Oh, I really want to get acquainted with such talented people, who lie low, like Mr. Zhang. I am asking out of curiosity. Ge Chen smiled and said, My boss likes peace and quiet. Zhao Feng's expression became colder. Ge Chen changed the subject, when he saw Zhao Feng's expression and said, The person I contacted this time is called Zhang Hongbo, who is the senior management here. He's a slippery fellow and likely to demand an exorbitant price. Zhang Han nodded his head. I asked someone to calculate the turnover here. Its monthly income is between 250 million yuan and 350 million yuan, while its daily revenue is between 8 million yuan and 11 million yuan. If you want to reserve the whole amusement park for one day, normally you need to spend something like 8 to 11 million yuan. But it also depends on the one we are going to talk with, Guchen said. Where are we meeting? Zhao Feng asked. At the Blue Bay Tea House. Let's go. Zhao Feng said. He somehow found that Guchen was not the same person as he used to be. But he could not make out what the specific changes were. Perhaps he was somewhat scheming, and not as candid as before. Zhao Feng also felt that Guchen had a superior manner now. He thought that he shared equal status with Zhao Feng, but now, as a boss, he became arrogant on account of his growing status. Oh, by the way, how did you deal with Lao Biao and Meng Wu? Zhao Feng suddenly asked. The two of them. Guchen was stunned. Then he chuckled and replied, I sent them to Europe and they won't be back. Besides, I didn't transfer their savings. That's good. Zhao Feng said, you will be the new leader in the Southern District in future, and I hope that you will keep away from any gray areas of businesses. I can handle that. Guchen said bluntly, as he did not want to talk about such things. Fine. Will you arrest me if I cross the line? Guchen asked. No. Zhao Feng burst out laughing and shook his head, then said, I'm no longer a member of the system. Even if I were, I wouldn't care about these things. And will you save me if I get into trouble? Guchen asked again. Zhao Feng paused for a few seconds, then shook his head and answered, no. All right. Guchen chuckled and said, anyway, we used to be brothers. If you need my help in the future, just call me, maybe we can have a drink together. Of course. Zhao Feng patted Guchen on the arm, and smiled. Here we are. Guchen said while looking ahead, then he did not talk anymore but sighed, his mind full of thoughts. He had to keep a distance from Zhao Feng, Ahu and some of his brothers. Although they would not be close brothers, they were still good friends. As time went on, their feelings would gradually fade away. For now, they had taken totally different roads. Guchen, however, did not feel any loss, because this was the reality. They walked into the Blue Bay Tea House. The Blue Bay Tea House was located at the edge of the amusement park on the mountain. Sitting in it, people had a good view of the attractive scenery of the bay and even the island far away. It was a good place to have afternoon tea while they were off. After giving their names at the entrance, the waiter welcomed them with a warm smile. At a table on the edge of the tea room, sat a thin, bespectacled man. Hello, Mr. Gu, sit down please. The man got up and greeted them. Guchen greeted him and introduced, this is my brother, Zhao Feng. Hello, Mr. Zhao. After shaking hands with him, Zhao Feng sat down. Zhang Hongbo felt slightly unhappy when he saw Zhao Feng's indifferent look. Why is this underground gangster putting on airs with me? He was not afraid of these people in front of him, for the board of directors of the amusement park also had strong connections. In his opinion, it definitely could not be provoked by underground forces. But he overlooked it since these men were magnates. He maintained a warm smile on his face and said, this is the top Mojian tea I have brought, which has just been brewed. Please try it. Thank you. Zhao Feng nodded, took a sip of tea and said without preamble, you should know my intention. I'm going to rent an amusement park next Sunday. Please give me a quote. Guchen froze at this moment. You've really gone directly to the point. It would be better to chat with him first. However, what was done. After thinking for a while, Guchen looked at Zhang Hongbo and said, Mr. Zhang, since we're all friends, please give me a lower price. We aren't friends at all. Zhang Hongbo laughed scornfully in his mind, but he smiled and said with enthusiasm, no problem. After saying that, his expression was a bit upset. He said as he looked at Zhao Feng, it would be easier during off-peak seasons, but now we are at the peak season and I can't give you a substantial discount. After all, I'm not the boss. Just give me a quote. Zhao Feng shook his hand and said, 12 million yuan. Zhang Hongbo said directly, 10 million yuan for renting the amusement park and 2 million yuan for paying off the staff. As you all know, the park isn't usually rented out for the day, and it's also the first time. Deal. Give me your account number. Okay. Zhang Hongbo was slightly shocked and wondered why this man was so straightforward. While he was taking out his bank card, Zhang Hongbo thought and said, "But I have to warn you that I can't make sure that the event will go well. If I fail, I will refund the money to you. But I can't give you back the money for paying off the staff." Guchen frowned. Catching sight of his expression, Zhang Hongbo said hastily, "The success rate is above 90%. I'm only talking about any unforeseen circumstances. I've transferred the money." Zhao Feng took out his mobile phone to transfer, then glanced at Zhang Hongbo flatly and said, "I don't want anything terrible to happen. Sorry to bother you, Mr. Zhang. I should leave now." Then Zhao Feng got up and left. After a pause, Guchen did not follow him but chatted with Zhang Hongbo for about 10 minutes before leaving. After they left, Zhang Hongbo looked at the message and broke into a smile filled with avarice. He made several phone calls at the same time. "Hello, Xuanhuan, send a report to the superior to say that we need to test all the equipment on Sunday, now. Moreover, tickets for Sunday are no longer available online. Boss Lee, I plan to buy the ghost which I chose the last time, and I'll make a one-time payment. Well, we can make a deal within these few days. Honey, didn't I promise to buy you a car last time? What about the new Jaguar? I'll buy it tomorrow. Ha, ha, ha. I'll come and see you in the evening." "In the afternoon? No, I'm going to settle something for my wife this afternoon. Just wait for me in the evening. Give me a kiss." Chapter 257, Zhao Du's Opinion. Zhao Feng drove his Mercedes out of the amusement park. He neither asked for a contract nor was he worried about whether Zhang Hongbo would be able to arrange everything. In Zhao Feng's view, Zhang Hongbo obviously knew Guchen's identity and he would not dare embezzle the money. Moreover, Zhao Feng was not concerned that he had asked for more money to feather his nest, for 12 million yuan was within his expectation. No matter how much tips Zhang Hongbo wanted, he would give it to him as long as he complied with the requirements. After returning to the restaurant and finding that he had nothing to do, Zhao Feng left for the beach. Assault training was almost done, and it ended in a few days. Tu and the other men were nimble. They acquired knowledge at a fast speed and made remarkable progress while practicing. In Meng Meng's leisure restaurant, Zhang Han began his preparations for cooking. When it was nearly 12 o'clock, the Sun family were sitting at the table for members only, which was in the middle of the restaurant. Soon, Liang Mengkai and other two people arrived. "Hey, you came so early today?" Liang Mengkai asked curiously. She was well aware of the members' habits since she ate in this restaurant every day. Generally speaking, the Sun family usually came over after 12:30. "We came in the morning." Sun Dongying turned to answer with a smile. "Why are you so early?" Liang Mengkai grinned. "What's for lunch? Is there any meat?" Yu Qingqing stared in the direction of the kitchen. "There's no meat. We ordered cold noodles for lunch today." Sun Dongying shook his head and said, "What, can you order now?" Zhao Du was totally shocked. "Because I planned to go abroad for a period of time, Mr. Zhang asked us what we would like to eat." Sun Ming smiled amiably. "Oh, Uncle Sun. What are you going to go abroad?" Yu Qingqing asked curiously. "My dad intends to learn about the entertainment business from one of his old friends, as he wants to help me realize my dream of being a superstar." Sun Dongying said proudly. "Yo, we're both from the same industry." Zhao Du twisted his body. "Are you also involved in this industry?" Sun Dongying asked. "Ha, ha." Zhao Du smiled and held up his pinky. His face was brimming with confidence and he said, "Have you heard of Yongtai Entertainment Company?" "Yes, Liu Kun is an actor from that company." Sun Dongying cheered up, as he looked at Zhao Du. Although Yongtai Entertainment Company was not particularly famous, it was still a large-scale entertainment company, which had cultivated many B-list and C-list stars. "You mean Xi Liu?" Zhao Du pursed his lips and said in a feminine tone, "I cultivated him when I was the music director in that company." but I was transferred to the post of deputy director of the publicity department later, as I offended someone. I resigned not long ago. My gosh, you have such a strong background. Sun Donging answered in astonishment. Ah, I'm not as awesome as you think. Zhao Du waved his hands repeatedly. Do you think I am qualified to be a star? Sun Donging said, looking forward to his response. Qualified? Zhao Du sized him up, then shook his head slightly. You don't think I have the necessary qualifications? Sun Donging became nervous. It's not impossible for you to become a star, but I think there's a better way for you. When it came to working, Zhao Du was serious. What is it? Sun Donging asked hurriedly. At that point, Sun Ming, Sun's mother, Yu Qingqing, as well as Liang Menkai, looked at Zhao Du with curiosity. Don't waste time, tell us quickly. Yu Qingqing rolled her eyes at Zhao Du. Take it easy, I'll tell you now. Zhao Du snorted, then looked at Sun Donging and said, do you remember the first time you came to the restaurant? You were a little arrogant at that time. On account of your personality, you can start without all the video streaming. Over the past 2 years, live video streaming has become more and more popular, which will make it easy for you to emerge to fame. The daily life of the rich second generation is a great crowd puller, and you can become a singer when you have established your popularity. I am giving you this suggestion, after taking all the factors into account. Live video streaming, I had the same idea before. Sun Donging's eyes brightened, but then he hesitated and said, but it's too difficult for a host to turn into a star, and nobody has really succeeded, as many people tend to reject these hosts. That's because they are not doing it the right way. Zhao Du shook his head gently and said, since people earn a lot from live video streaming, few of them are willing to give it up after becoming famous. However, giving up live streaming is only the first step, then you have to face problems with resources, like the people who will cultivate you and invest in you. Sun Donging hesitated and looked at Sun Ming. You can do whatever you like, just follow your heart. Sun Ming smiled tenderly and said, but you must become a man of virtue. I see, Dad. Sun Donging compressed his lips and nodded his head seriously. Seeing this scene, Liang Menkai and others all chuckled, for they could feel the warmth of the family circle. At noon, Zhang Han made cold noodles, together with cucumbers in garlic sauce and Sichuan-style potato strips. After lunch, Sun Donging took his parents to the airport and bid farewell to them reluctantly. However, when he drove the Audi A8L back to the underground parking lot of the community, he felt a little excited. After getting out of the car, he took out a brand new car key and pressed the button. Suddenly, the light of a sports car next to the Audi A8L flashed brightly. It's really a beauty. Sun Donging was completely enchanted by the car. As he mumbled this to himself, he sold the BMW Z4 previously, and bought a yellow McLaren 625C, which cost 3.5 million yuan. He received the money from Sun Ming, who gave him 5 million yuan, before going abroad. He was extremely glad to have this money at his disposal, so he sold off his previous car and bought the McLaren, which he had been looking forward to owning for a long time. Although he spent 3.5 million yuan on that car, he still had over 2 million yuan, including his pocket money and the money from selling his old car. It was also the most amount of cash he ever had. After opening the car door and entering the car, Sun Donging sized up the interior furnishings for some time, then he gently stroked the steering wheel with both hands. With a satisfied look on his face, he started the car and stepped on the accelerator and left the underground parking lot. The car naturally attracted the attention of many passers-by when he was driving it on the street, but Sun Donging felt a little unsatisfied. It's not as satisfying as a membership card. His lips curled in a sneer. He remembered that the people in front of him had repeatedly exclaimed in awe when he walked toward the restaurant with his membership card in his hand. He drove to the restaurant, parked the car and then hurried in. Boss, Sun Donging stepped close to Zhang Han and whispered, "Since my parents have gone abroad, can you allow my friends to use their membership cards?" After speaking, Sun Donging looked at Zhang Han intensely. The boss's decision would influence whether he could show off to his friends. He would succeed in his pursuit of a girl if he brought her to this restaurant, where ordinary people could still eat wonders, and there were various kinds of delicacies available for members. Under his gaze, Zhang Han gave him a satisfactory answer. "Yes. Yeah, thank you, boss. Ha, 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 that's great." Sun Donging looked at Meng Meng, who was playing with the toys, and said with a smile, "Boss, I just bought a new car. Meng Meng, do you want to go for a ride with me?" "Go for a ride?" Meng Meng put down her toys, her big eyes lit up, and she said in a childish tone, "Well, what's going for a ride? It means that we'll drive around." Sun Donging explained, "Drive around?" Meng Meng pondered for a moment, then looked at Zhang Han and said, "Papa, shall we go?" "We'll go if Meng Meng wants to," Zhang Han said. At this time, if Xian saw how he acted, she would have rolled her eyes at him. "What are you doing as a father, giving in to whatever Meng Meng wants? You don't even treat me in this way. What a bastard you are." Well, all right, let's go for a ride." Her words stunned Sun Donging, for he thought Meng Meng seemed to be somewhat reluctant. As soon as Meng Meng agreed, Zhang Han picked her up and went out of the restaurant, then sat in the passenger seat. As for Sun Donging, he chose a random route and then drove around. In the meantime, on an island in Hong Kong waters, the island, which was relatively large, was overgrown with luxuriant clusters of trees. In the middle of the jungle, stood lots of buildings made up of squares and other facilities. It was a military base, and the island was named Hidden Dragon. The Special Forces in Hong Kong held a significant competition on Hidden Dragon Island every year. The competition was not only for the purpose of keeping track of the Special Forces training, but also related to the resources they could obtain in the future. At this point in a small square, there were 8 challenge arenas and 2 people fighting in each. There was a stand, several meters high, in the innermost area, and there sat about a dozen people, including Instructor Liu. All of a sudden, 3 people were carried down by the medical staff from the 3 challenge arenas, while the other 3 who won, raised their right hands to show their victory. When Instructor Liu saw what happened, his face became darker. In general, the fighters should have stopped at a certain point. Only people from the groups which were on bad terms with each other would wound their opponents. "Ha, ha, ha, Instructor Liu, why are your soldiers becoming weaker?" A bald man in his 30s, standing a little distance away from Instructor Liu on the stand, asked in a sarcastic tone, "Your wolf-head detachment is poor in strength. I can't understand why Zhang Han Special Forces sent you here. I think it would have been better to send the 2nd detachment to compete with us. Although they are no match for us from Dragon Eagle Detachment, at least they won't suffer such a miserable failure." "Tyrishan, can you stop making sarcastic comments? What are you talking about? Who do you think you are talking to?" Instructor Liu thumped the table and glared at him. "Why do you call me Tyrishan? Are you trying to make me lose my temper?" The bald man sneered and said, "Let me remind you again, Instructor Liu, my name is Tyruishan. Doesn't it sound the same as Tyrishan? Whatever." Tyrishan laughed scornfully and said, "As their instructor, you should know their actual strength. They come here every year, even though they have been defeated so many times already. Ha, ha, none of them can take the moves. They're so awesome. Fuck." Instructor Liu suddenly stood up and kicked his chair aside. He growled, "Let's go up and fight." "Fight with you, my defeated foe? Are you sure?" Tyruishan's eyes flashed. He had been waiting for this moment, so he stood up and answered in a deep voice. "What are you doing? Are you acting like instructors?" The chief instructor, who was sitting in the head seat, frowned at them. The instant he spoke, they stopped talking, and the other instructors tried to calm them down. "Fine, Lao Liu, Lao Tai, Stop arguing, just sit down and watch the competition. There's no need for you to argue every time you meet. Cool down, you will be together for a few days, so please put up with each other." After hearing what they said, Ruishan snorted, "Forget it, I'd better not bother to argue with the person who pulls strings to get things done." Then he sat down and looked at the challengerinas, with a look of indifference. Instructor Liu was so angry that his face turned pale. Then he left. Chapter 258, Upstart Dong. After walking through the square, Instructor Liu stopped at the edge of the jungle. He leaned against a tree trunk, took out a box of 3-5 cigarettes from his pocket, pulled one out, lit it and took a puff. Hiss. What a beastard. Instructor Liu was so annoyed that he gnashed his teeth repeatedly. After a pause, he took out his mobile phone and dialed a number directly. As the phone connected, he said in a deep voice, "Xiaofeng, the people of Dragon Eagle Detachment are pushing me too hard. Did they make trouble again?" At this time, Zhao Feng was on one side of the beach, and he frowned slightly after hearing what he said. Dragon Eagle Detachment, which was termed as Devil Detachment, was the 7th detachment of Thunder Special Forces. The people of Dragon Eagle Detachment did not act according to the norms of common sense and always behaved in a malicious manner. They nearly killed all the prisoners from the hostile forces, and sometimes would pick fights with their friendly forces. They had short fuses like ruffians. Because of these characteristics, they were able to complete the most tasks among the detachments. All these achievements were due to their instructor, Ruishan. Ruishan had a grudge against Instructor Liu because when they competed for the instructor post of Wolf Head Detachment at the beginning, Ruishan prevailed in all 8 examinations. However, Instructor Liu won. Ruishan, therefore, insisted that Instructor Liu had pulled strings and asked him to fight. As a result, Instructor Liu was injured, while Ruishan was expelled from the Zhang Han Special Forces. 1 year later, Ruishan joined the Thunder Special Forces, and he became several times stronger than before, and succeeded in entering the inward strength stage. Since then, he clashed many times with Instructor Liu. In fact, Zhao Feng had taken part in this competition twice. He was wounded by the person from Dragon Eagle Detachment, for the first time, in the following year. He tried his best and finally defeated his opponent. Furthermore, Zhao Feng was one of the few who was able to win a round. At that time, people within this circle were aware of the 2 opposite detachments, but the superiors never paid any attention to them, even though some soldiers were seriously injured during the fight. Perhaps they deemed that sometimes disputes and hatred forced people to move forward. "How's it going this time?" Zhao Feng asked. Ouch. Hearing what he asked, Instructor Liu sighed deeply and said, "This is our worst performance in years. Our speed, strength and shooting scores were all inferior to them. Today, in the first round of the competition, 4 of the men who fought against the soldiers of the Dragon Eagle Detachment suffered minor injuries, while the other 8 were seriously injured. They're determined to teach me a lesson this time. I can't stand it any longer. Xiaofeng, you're also a man of the Wolf Head Detachment. If conditions don't improve these 2 days, I'll ask you to come to help me win a round." "No problem, but I need to inform my boss first and arrange everything. You have to tell me in advance." Zhao Feng replied, "It depends." Instructor Liu puffed, with his eyes narrowed, then said, "By the way, Xiaofeng, how did I treat you before?" "Very well, you are like my brother. What's the matter?" Zhao Feng asked with curiosity. Instructor Liu swallowed his saliva and said slowly, "Can you ask your boss to come together with you and help me defeat Ruishan? I'm tired of looking at him. My master definitely won't go." Zhao Feng told him directly. "Are you kidding me? My master accompanies his daughter every day, and is too busy to go anywhere else." Zhao lifted his chin and said with indifference, "Ha, ha, I can beat Ruishan alone." "Beat him on your own? Are you kidding me? Why are you speaking in this way, instructor? Every dog has its day. As soon as Zhao Feng spoke, his mobile phone beeped. Did he hang up? Zhao Feng froze, then his mouth quivered slightly and he murmured, "You hung up before I finished speaking, ouch." The matter that upset him most was that he had intended to show off, but failed. In other words, it was like he tried for an hour to fart. But someone demanded that he held it back. He really felt uncomfortable. On the other side, Sun Donging was driving along New Moon Street. He could not drive fast in urban areas, but when they arrived at a place with fewer people, he sped up. The engine of the sports car sounded very beautiful. Zhang Han was sitting in the passenger seat with Meng Meng in his arms. Meanwhile, Meng Meng was looking at the scenery outside. After driving around, they returned to the restaurant. Sun Donging parked his car and said to Zhang Han happily, "Boss, how was it? This car is so great. It has a powerful engine and can go so fast." Zhang Han responded nonchalantly, then got out of the car with Meng Meng in his arms, leaving Sun Donging behind, dumbfounded. Sun Donging shook his head helplessly. For he was barking up the wrong tree. The boss earned 10 million yuan each time he sold a membership card, and this money was enough to buy 3 similar cars. He glanced at the watch and found it was past 3 o'clock. Therefore, Sun Donging did not plan to go anywhere but stayed in the restaurant until he finished dinner. Of course, he also wanted to flaunt his new car to the ordinary customers in the restaurant. After entering the restaurant, Sun Dong took his usual seat. He took out his mobile phone and entered the app called Down I Live. In general, he liked to watch this live video before going to bed. It usually featured beautiful women singing, online games and live entertainment occasionally. The noble system also existed in this app. The users' titles varied from Viscount, Count, Duke to the Emperor, just like QQ members. They were also symbols of identity. Generally speaking, the Emperor was the main source of attention wherever he went. After all, the one who had this title had to pay 120,000 yuan the first time round and then 100,000 yuan every month, although the platform would give gifts in return worth much more than the person could use. He was after all, paying 100,000 yuan monthly. As for Sun Donging, he had been given the title of Duke since a year ago. Sometimes he would donate some gifts to his favorite streamers, and he was now well known and had more than 100,000 followers. Sun Donging knew that these were all the resources he could use. Should I continue to donate gifts? Sun Donging's eyes flickered, and he murmured, "I should donate more gifts conspicuously." Sun Donging entered the broadcast room which he usually clicked into. The streamer was a beauty named Little Snowflake, whose most distinguishing features were her big breasts. Besides that, she was also good at singing. After entering, he saw a note in the comment area, saying that Duke Hengdong had entered the room. "Welcome, Brother Hengdong." Little Snowflake greeted him in front of the screen, with a smile. Sun Donging created his online name casually. He directly switched the last 2 words of his name, and nicknamed himself Hengdong. Sun Donging glanced at the popularity count of this room, which was more than 1.2 million. He then took a look at his balance. After finding that he still had over 120,000 yuan, he directly clicked into the aristocratic district and opened services for Emperor without any hesitation. Whoosh! A large banner flashed across every broadcast room, saying that Hengdong had opened the Emperor in Little Snowflake's room. Clatter! In an instant, many visitors gathered together, making this room's popularity rise sharply. Wow, my God! Little Snowflake had a fright. She opened her mouth wide, and her breasts shook violently. In the meantime, the screen was filled with comments. Big. So big. Oh, my God, her breasts are starting to quiver. Be careful, everyone. Oh, my God, Brother Hengdong, you have been given the title Emperor. You're so rich, I do worship you. Little Snowflake said in excitement, and at the same time, thinking of the rewards she would be receiving, for an emperor. You must be popular by virtue of your big breasts. Su Donging typed, with a smile. He knew how to inspire visitors. After he typed these words, other people all followed suit, filling the screen with this type of remark. Brother Dong, it's really generous of you. I love you. Mew. I'll sing whatever you want. Little Snowflake chatted with him, hastily. She had not expected that Heng Dong would turn out to be an upstart. Sun Donging smiled, then typed, I heard that big breasts can support a mobile phone. As soon as this remark was made, all the visitors went crazy, copying what he typed in succession. Obviously, Sun Donging's two simple words had filtered into many visitors' minds. The purpose of surfing the internet was to have fun. Support a mobile phone? Although I am able to do it, it probably will have a bad effect. Little Snowflake stuck her tongue out. Swish, swish, swish. 10 super rockets went up one after another at the next moment. One rocket cost 2,000 yuan, and 10 cost 20,000 yuan. Judging by what he did, all the people present thought he was really wealthy. He's so rich, so handsome. Emperor Dong is really mighty. Brother Dong, you're embarrassing me. Little Snowflake grinned and said, swish, swish, swish. Another 10 super rockets went up one by one. Oh, Brother Dong, it's not good. Swish. In the end, Sun Donging donated gifts worth about 100,000 yuan. Since she was aware that he was the one sending all the rewards, Little Snowflake did not say any more and held the mobile phone within a limit. Then she asked Sun Donging to order 2 songs. At this point, the room's popularity had exceeded 2 million. Although the number was not real, nobody cared at this moment. After she sang 2 songs, Sun Donging left the broadcast room. He recharged 500,000 yuan and entered the room of a male game streamer. Swish, swish, swish. As 10 large rockets went up, hundreds of thousands of tourists were attracted by it immediately. My gosh! What he did surprised the streamer. Sun Donging led the comments again this time and left after donating gifts worth 100,000 yuan. On hearing that Sun Donging was donating a group of rockets in the next streamer's room, visitors entered the room at the same time. He spent another 100,000 yuan. People guessed that Brother Dong was a super upstart as he was spending money like water. Meanwhile, the number of Sun Donging's followers increased dramatically. When he went to the broadcast room that was less popularity, some visitors had started typing in advance. Emperor Dong has arrived. In just over an hour, Sun Donging spent over 400,000 yuan, and people felt that he seemed to have spent 4 million yuan because he was so fast, accurate and ruthless. Therefore, he was nicknamed Upstart Dong. Now that he had achieved his goal, Sun Donging logged out. Then he bought a set of equipment for live video streaming and began to make preparations. It was 5:30. While Zhang Han was preparing dinner in the kitchen, customers arrived in succession. To Zhang Han's surprise, Xian and Zif came back. Mama, you're back. Meng Meng immediately put down her toys and reached out her small arms to Xian. Mama, pick me up. Xian walked over and held Meng Meng in her arms. When she stepped upstairs, she glanced at Zhang Han and said with a smile, I want to eat the roast duck you made last time. Okay. Hearing Xian's request, Zhang Han nodded directly. Xian was satisfied with his attitude. That's what you should be doing. I'm Meng Meng's mother, I'm the hostess. You should listen to my requests. Chapter 259, Does he like black silk stockings? Zhao Han called Zhang Feng, and half an hour later he sent over 5 ducks. Since the members knew that Zhang Han was going to roast ducks, they did not hurry and took their time. Some of them chatted among themselves, while others were engrossed with their mobile phones. However, most of the ordinary diners felt ecstatic. They heard that roast duck would be served in this restaurant at night, and were worried when they saw Pearson, sitting at a corner of the restaurant. As the fragrance of roast duck permeated the air, Pearson made a lot of comments. The ordinary diners could not enjoy their dinner at all. Fortunately, the ducks were not disposed of in advance. So the normal eaters all got through the torment. The roast duck was ready only at 8 o'clock. Zhao Feng was on the first floor, so Zhang Han carried the dishes and went upstairs for dinner. "You are back early today." Zhang Han glanced at Xian. Xian had changed into casual clothes. The white loose t-shirt hid her charms but added a youthful flair to her. Xian wore light blue denim shorts, and her slender, white legs were very attractive to look at. Even Zhang Han stared at them for a long time. Seeing that Zhang Han's eyes were blazing with desire, Xian crossed her left leg over the right one. But unknowingly, this posture made her look more attractive. How beautiful her legs were. "I have some free time now and I will come back early in the future. Tomorrow is Sunday, I can take a break," Xian answered, while looking at Zhang Han. "That's great." Zhang Han looked at Xian and smiled. "You're wrong, brother-in-law, we." Zif pursed her mouth, and said in an angry tone, but before she could finish speaking, Xian said, "Fei. Didn't I tell you that we shouldn't talk about work at home?" "Ah, all right." Zif shook her head helplessly, then she did not say anything more, but fixed her eyes on the roast duck. Judging from their words, Zhang Han speculated that what happened in Shangjing must have affected Xian's work. However, it was good that Xian had more free time. Papa, enjoy the meat rolls." Sitting between Zhang Han and Xian, Meng Meng waved her small arms and said, "Well." They started their dinner. Meanwhile, in the Starry Sky Bar, it was open from 7 o'clock in the evening, but there were not so many people from 7 to 8 o'clock. In general, a large number of customers would come in from 9 to 10 o'clock. The peak time was between 9 and 12 o'clock. As for Zhang Li, she was one of the 2 DJs on duty. During this period of time, there was also another male DJ. Apart from her, during this 3-hour golden period, each of them had to work for about an hour, and there would be some performances as well. Zhang Li was walking along the staff passageway, at the side of the bar. She wore a tight sports-style outfit that bared her midriff, a pair of leather pants and black sneakers. Her golden hair was tied up in a ponytail. She did not have too much makeup on, except for her eyeliner, which made her look gorgeous. "My goddess Li, when will you promise to be with me? I'm fantastic in bed." After Zhang Li stepped into the night scene, a man with cropped hair and big eyes, standing among 4 men, in front of the door, teased her with a smile. "Day, you're courting death now, get out." Zhang Li rolled her eyes at him. The man standing in front of her was in charge of the night show, and people called him Day. He was a very amiable person and would not get angry when others played jokes on him. "Ha, Goddess Li, I'm being absolutely sincere, please think over what I've said." Day patted his chest as he said this. "I'm really tired of you." Zhang Han pushed him gently, then with a smile, cursed, "Get out, don't bother me, I'll have a drink with Liu King." "Goddess, you'd better drink less since you can't control yourself when you are drunk, you have to work later," Day warned. "You are the one who can't behave yourself, after getting drunk." Zhang Li glared at him, then walked to the drinks counter. However, just after taking a couple of steps, she could hear Liu King screaming. "What are you doing? Don't pull me, let me go, or I'll shout." As she looked ahead, she saw a man with white spiky hair. He wore a jacket, an expensive watch and was in jeans. The drunk man was holding Liu King's hand tightly. On the table about 5 meters behind him, stood 4 young men and 2 young women, who were looking at them, and smiling at the same time. Going by their branded clothes and coltish expressions and temperament, they were childs who were here to pursue pleasure. The white-haired man became more arrogant. He was a bit tipsy and said, "Belle, it is your blessing if I pay you any attention. Why are you resisting? It's useless for you to shout. Even if the manager comes, he has to respectfully address me as elder brother. As long as you have a drink with me, I'll give you a good tip." As the man spoke, he took out a thin stack of banknotes from his pocket, and tried to stuff the notes into Liu King's bra. "Oh! What are you doing?" Let me go now, you are hurting me. Liu King struggled to free herself, but her wrist hurt as she was not as strong as the man in front of her. At this moment, Zhang Li raised her eyebrows and walked over with vigorous strides. She picked up a glass of wine from the table of a guest, then splashed it at the man's face. Whoosh! The chilled wine splattered all over the white-haired man's face. The man, whose wine had been taken away, was shocked and remained speechless. Let her go. Zhang Li glared at the man and said coldly, then get out. What? The white-haired man shook his head and released Liu Qi. Then he wiped his face with his hand, and said, while sizing up, Zhang Li, you're so charming, girl. Didn't you hear what I said? Get out now. Zhang Li frowned. Her temper was much worse than Zif's. Although she was not as mean as Zif, she was fearless and quite a wild child. Ouch. At this time, the white-haired man's companions gathered together. One of them hissed and said, where are you from? You're so hot. How dare you speak to elder brother so rudely? Ha, ha, she splashed me with wine. Ah, what should I do? The white-haired wiped his face again, while looking at his companions. She will have to drink and sleep with elder brother, as she splashed him. Echoed the man. As soon as this remark was made, they all burst out laughing. Judging by their tones and attitudes, they were out to get Zhang Li. Zhang Li became angry when she saw their behavior, while Liu King felt scared. However, she stood firmly beside Zhang Li. Ha, 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 that's right. The white-haired man grinned and said, while stretching out his hand, bitch, you dared to splash me, I'll show you how powerful I am in bed tonight. Bang! The sound of a bottle breaking could be heard. In front of everyone, a bottle filled with imported wine, crashed onto elder brother's head. The liquor, mixed with blood, flowed down his head. How powerful are you? Zhang Li pointed at them and gestured, with the neck of the bottle, in her hand. Ah! The white-haired man was in so much pain that he could not help clutching his head. Then he shouted angrily, beat her up. The instant he finished speaking, the other four men's eyes widened and they prepared to subdue Zhang Li, to be at the mercy of elder brother. Hey! What are you doing? What are you doing? At this moment, Day quickly ran over, followed by several of his men. His face turned pale when he saw Zhang Li hitting the white-haired man with a bottle. Stop fighting, calm down. Day said hastily, and asked his men to stop them. Then he approached the white-haired man and said cautiously, young master, how about you? Oh, you're bleeding. I'll send someone to bandage your head. Get out. The white-haired man kicked out at Day. Day froze and did not dare to say anything. Instead, he smiled and whispered, young master, she's the new DJ, who is very ignorant. She's also a friend of mine. Please don't get angry and let us dress your wound, or it will be infected. A new DJ? The white-haired man gave him a ferocious smile. He endured the pain, pointed at Zhang Li, gnashed his teeth and said, you'd better watch out. Then he gave Day an angry stare and hurried away with his companions. Day, like an attendant, whispered as he followed them to the door. Seeing what had happened, Liu King tried to hide her face and whispered, thank you, Lili, but we seemed to have caused trouble. What are you afraid of? Elder brother Long will support us. Zhang Li snorted and said, if you should meet this kind of people in future, you should hit them with the bottle. Who the hell is he? He actually dared to talk dirty, after drinking some wine. I see. Liu King nodded her head quietly. As they were speaking, Day returned. He looked at Zhang Li with a wry smile and sighed softly. Ah, Goddess Li, you are too impulsive. You can't go round beating up elder brother. What's the matter? Zhang Li curled her lips and said, this kind of people have to be punished. They're all shallow people. He is not. Day shook his head repeatedly and said, his name is Jill, he is the son of a rich man in the Jiansha district, and has a strong standing. Goddess Li, Xiao King, you'd better take a few days off to hide, he will be back by then. Why should we hide? Elder brother Long will support me. Zhang Li answered, with a slight frown. Then she took Luo King to the bar counter. Elder brother Long probably can't settle the matter. Day gave her a wry smile. He did not know the background of Jill was, but he had seen Jill and his father being hosted by Xia Shanhao, who was elder brother Long's boss, in person. He, therefore, thought that it would not be easy to settle the problem. However, he had no choice but to wait for elder brother Long to come back, and talk with him later. At 11:30 in the evening, in Meng Meng's leisure restaurant. Meng Meng had fallen asleep, although Xian was not feeling sleepy yet. She sat at the table near the window of the living room on the second floor, drinking red wine with Zhang Han. Time really flies, and it seems that it was only yesterday that I was an actress, but now I have a 4-year-old child. I don't know when I will become old. Xian took a sip of red wine, then looked out of the window and said this with some emotion. Sometimes, people would get emotional when they feel that time is passing away so quickly. But Zhang Han had something to say. He gazed at Xian's delicate cheeks, and then with a chuckle, whispered, "Maybe others will become old, but you won't. You're talking nonsense." Xian turned to roll her eyes at Zhang Han. Then she compressed her mouth and said, "I feel my complexion now isn't as good as it was a few years ago. It's really great." Zhang Han shook his head repeatedly and said, "You're as beautiful as you used to be, but now you have become more mature and sexier." While speaking, Zhang Han looked at Xian's breasts in a casual way. "Come on." Xian curled her thin red lips slightly and said, "There are still some stretch marks on the left side of my tummy, which could not be removed." "Where are they? Let me see." Zhang Han said. "Here." Xian's lifted her white t-shirt slightly upward with her left hand, to reveal her tummy, and pointed to the lower left side of her stomach, with her right hand at the same time. "They're very faint, I can't see it clearly if I don't look carefully." After glancing at her waist several times, Zhang Han was unable to concentrate. "You're so beautiful, your waist is so slim and white, and you're still in good shape. You're talking nonsense." Xian's face turned red. She pulled down the t-shirt hurriedly and rebuked him. "I'm telling the truth." Zhang Han smiled, looked down and said, "Your legs are the most beautiful I have ever seen. They are thin, long and straight. If you wear black silk stockings, you will look very sexy and charming." As he spoke, Zhang Han imagined Xian wearing silk stockings and felt hot and agitated. At this point, when he looked up, his eyes were filled with desire. Black silk stockings? Xian was slightly shocked. "Yes, why aren't you wearing silk stockings?" Zhang Han asked casually. "I don't like wearing silk stockings." "Why?" Zhang Han said in doubt. Because they may tempt others. Anyway, I don't like wearing them when I am out." Xian answered, compressing her mouth. "You don't like wearing them outside, so?" Zhang Han gazed at Xian significantly. She found herself blushing and felt coy. "I'm going to bed." Xian felt a little shy, although her face did not change. She walked much faster than before. Looking at Xian's back, Zhang Han chuckled and shook his head. Life was so wonderful. After returning to the bedroom, Xian changed into pajamas and laid on the bed, pouting. At this moment, she was somewhat adorable and charming. Her eyes flashed and she hummed. "Does he like black silk stockings? Idiot, you're finally showing your true colors. Are my legs really beautiful?" Xian stretched her legs and curled them up. She knew that she would be extremely attractive if she wore black silk stockings. Wear them for him? No way. Xian drew back her long legs and snorted. She could not stand the picture that she was imagining, herself wearing silk stockings in front of Zhang Han. Am I nervous? Am I shy? Or do I have other ideas? She could not figure it out, but she felt a little numb at this moment. It felt like she had goosebumps. Chapter 260, A Nuisance? Xian tossed and turned about in bed, her head filled with fantasies. People who were falling in love with someone, or those who were about to be sweet on somebody, would certainly behave in this way. In fact, she was aware of this, but had been waiting for the appropriate occasion. She would not accept his love confession unless the idiot courted her both romantically and with a lot of passion. This was the only expectation of Xian. Although Xian was mature in mind, she had never been in love with anyone and had never experienced love before. She, therefore, had the same expectation, like any young girl. After lying in bed for more than 10 minutes, Xian puffed out her cheeks, took the phone angrily to find Zhang Han's WeChat and typed, "Idiot, are you asleep?" "Yes, bastard, how can you reply when you are asleep?" Xian replied, adding a grinning emoji. "Ha, ha, ha. What do you mean? He is asleep." Swish. Xian felt a little scared, so she hid under the quilt, only revealing her big eyes, to stare at the door. The whole room was quiet, except for Meng Meng's faint breathing. It was very dark as the curtains were drawn across the windows. "Bastard." Xian grunted in anger, then reached out her hand to turn on the bedside lamp. "I'm angry." Xian responded. "All right, just kidding." Xian looked at the screen and did not reply. 30 seconds later, Zhang Han sent another message. "Are you truly angry? Are you afraid of the dark? Why don't I come over and keep you company? Nice try." Xian replied eventually, "I can't sleep. Let's go to the living room and chat for a while." "No, I don't want to move." "What shall we do? I want to listen to your story." "I'll go to your room right now." Zhang Han typed, "Number. Just sends voice messages through WeChat and I'll listen to them through my earphones." After she finishing typing, Xian took her earphones and put them on. "What kind of story do you want to listen to?" "The story you told Meng Meng last time, about being stopped at the dark jungle." "Okay." Zhang Han replied with an okay emoji. After more than 20 seconds, Zhang Han sent a voice message. The Dwarf King thought it was an ordinary jungle, but he didn't know it was a cursed dark jungle, filled with many mutated, fierce beasts. Zhang Han's gentle voice soothed Xian, and she became a bit drowsy as she listened. Xian was half awake, and she did not know how long it was before the story in the earphones suddenly stopped. Then Zhang Han asked in a low voice, "Are you still listening to me? I forgot to tell that you'd better take off your earphones when you sleep, otherwise you will feel uncomfortable after wearing them for a long time. Are you asleep?" After hearing his words, Xian felt so confused that she did not move but kept the earphones on. Besides, she even did not bother to turn off the bedside lamp. Less than a minute later, the door opened and Zhang Han came in. "Zhang Han?" Xian, who had been half asleep, gradually became more conscious. "What is he doing here?" Xian felt a little nervous. Zhang Han looked at Xian, who was lying in bed, and smiled. Xian seemed a different person at night than in the day. She was much more charming, lively, lovely and eccentric. Conversely, Xian was very rational and somewhat cold. She seldom smiled at others and was a graceful beauty in the daytime. Of course, in Zhang Han's view, her coldness was attributed to the fact that she had to come into contact with outsiders during the day. At night, she was relaxed since their family was together. "You haven't taken off your earphones," Zhang Han murmured and crept up to her bedside. Then he gently took off her earphones and placed her mobile phone on the bedside table. Looking at Xian's delicate face, Zhang Han's expression softened. He held out his finger and touched her tender cheek gently. As soon as his finger touched Xian's skin, Xian quivered inexplicably. Her reaction surprised Zhang Han, and he felt somewhat amused. Is she pretending to be asleep? After a short pause, Zhang Han bent over and put his lips close to Xian. Hiss. Xian felt breathless all of a sudden, and her muscles began to tighten. She could feel Zhang Han approaching, and his masculinity took her breath away. He wants to kiss me. What should I do? Xian's mind went blank and she did not know what she could do. At this point in time, she was stiff and could not move. Finally, Zhang Han kissed her. However, he kissed her on her forehead. He kissed her quickly and lightly, then stood up, straighten Xian's quilt and tuck in Meng Meng's quilt. After turning off the bedside lamp, Zhang Han went out and closed the door softly. Whoosh! Xian took a deep breath and opened her eyes, which were filled with satisfaction and warmth. At this moment, she felt warm because she was being taken care of. Moreover, she felt the love of his kiss on her forehead. It's not enough for you to be considerate, idiot. I won't accept you until you woo me in a romantic way. No, I won't accept it so quickly when he pays court to me the first time. Anyway, I can't accept his love so easily. Xian, therefore, was inspired again and tossed and turned for a long time, before she fell asleep. However, she did not communicate with Zhang Han through WeChat. Instead, she was thinking of romantic plots in her mind. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes her face was suffused with happiness, sometimes she frowned and sometimes she puffed out her cheeks. It was her vivid expressions that revealed her active inner life, as she was about to fall in love. It took a long time before Xian fell asleep. She slept soundly that night. When she was still in her sleep, she vaguely heard Meng's childish voice. Hey, Mama, the sun is shining on your little bottom. Why aren't you up yet? Papa, Mama is still in bed. Meng, stop messing about and let Mama sleep. Xian mumbled. Then Zhang Han's voice could be heard. Meng, come with me and let your Mama sleep for a while. Then Xian heard Meng's childish voice gradually fading away. After they went out and closed the door, the room became quiet and Xian fell asleep again. After waking up, Xian opened her eyes and glanced over the room. Then she sat up, picked up her phone to check the time. It's almost 10 o'clock. It's time to get up. I did have a sound sleep. Xian stretched, wore her slippers and went out of the bedroom to wash up. Elder sister Yan, did you just get up? What time did you sleep last night? Mama, you slept late. Sister-in-law. Good morning, sister-in-law. Xian turned her head, only to find Zuf, Zhang Li, Liu King, Zhang Han and Meng sitting on the sofa and looking at her. Oh, my God. Xian was shocked. She tried to calm herself down, then she smiled at them and hurried into the bathroom. Sister-in-law is really beautiful, even without makeup. Liu King complimented her, repeatedly. Ladies who look beautiful even without makeup, were like rare animals. Generally, beauties would become more beautiful after putting on makeup. As for thick makeup, it should be included in the 4 magic arts. Anybody who was ugly or dark could be beautified by thick makeup. Liu King had never seen people who looked so good without any makeup, like Xian. She's my sister-in-law. Of course, she is beautiful. Zhang Li curled her lips. She's elder sister Yan. Of course, she is beautiful. Zif chimed in. Hearing what they said, Zhang Han smiled. In his mind, he deemed that it would be very appropriate to say she's my wife. Of course, she is beautiful. After thinking for a while, Zhang Han did not say this, for it was too soon to call her his wife. However, Meng, who was in his arms, said, she's my mama, my super beautiful mama. They burst into laughter when they heard what Meng said. Just then, Xian's crisp sweet voice came from the bathroom. Zhang Han, come here. Okay. Zhang Han responded. After putting the little princess on the sofa, he stepped over. As soon as he walked into the bathroom, Xian closed the door, and her mouth was compressed. She stretched out her hand to reach Zhang Han's waist, pinched him, then said in a tone of blame, "Why didn't you wake me up since we have visitors? I didn't call you because you were sleeping so soundly. Besides, it doesn't matter if you sleep late." Zhang Han smiled and said, "That's not good." Xian gave him an angry stare. "It'll be fine." Gazing at Xian, Zhang Han smiled softly. "You look like a sleeping beauty when you are asleep." Hearing his words, Xian widened her eyes and immediately drew back her palm. Although she was shy, she looked at Zhang Han and said affectedly, I found my cell phone on the bedside table. When I got up in the morning, I placed it there. Oh, last night, when I just fell asleep, I vaguely felt, yes, I kissed you. Zhang Han said with a smile, as he found Xian was extremely cute at this time. You took advantage of my precarious position. Don't enter my bedroom without my permission in the future. Get out. I'm going to Washington. Xian's face turned red, and she pushed Zhang Han out. After Zhang Han went out, Xian patted her chest, finding that her heart was beating fast. She felt a little puzzled as she did not know why she had asked him such a question just now. Xian took a few deep breaths and began to Washington. Then she returned to her bedroom, made up simply and changed into the casual outfit she had worn last night. When walking out of the bedroom, Xian looked at Zhang Li with a smile, then said, Lili, I'm off today, shall we go shopping? Xian planned to give Zhang Li some gifts, while she was washing up, just now. Although she had not paid much attention to Zhang Li's views when she had met her the first time, she generally regarded herself as Zhang Li's sister-in-law. Now, go shopping? Great. Zhang Li agreed instantly, without any hesitation. Let's go. Xian picked up her handbag from the side. Don't you want to eat first? Zhang Han asked. No, we can eat together at noon. After a short deliberation, Xian went shopping with Zif and Zhang Li. Meng had wanted to go with them, but when she found that Zhang Han was staying in the restaurant, she pouted and chose to keep him company. She knew that they would buy lesser stuff if Papa did not go with them. As for Liu King, she decided to stay in the restaurant. After thinking for a moment, when they walked to the first floor, Zhao Feng was sitting on one side, playing with his mobile phone and chatting with Liang Mengkai. At the same time, Liang Mengkai seldom spoke to him before, but now they were chatting easily with each other. Zhao Feng, please accompany them on their shopping spree. Zhang Han said, after thinking for a while. He knew that women would go crazy when they shopped. Since he had to prepare lunch in the restaurant, Zhao Feng could help them carry all the bags. Okay. Zhao Feng stood up. No, we will go shopping by ourselves. Xian waved her hands, and left. Zif took the Mercedes and drove Xian and Zhang Li away. After they left, Meng ran to the sofa to play with her toys. Liu King stood by. After a pause, she said, while looking at Zhang Han, Brother Zhang, I don't know if I should tell you something. What is it? Zhang Han looked at her strangely. Liu King hesitated because Zhang Li did not tell him, and she was not sure if Zhang Han could solve the problem. If not, she would just increase his anxiety. So she shook her head and said, I'd better not say anything first. You can ask Lili when she comes back. A matter concerning Zhang Li? Zhang Han raised his eyebrows. At this point, Zhao Feng came over. He looked at Liu King with a smile and said, just tell us directly if something happened. Don't worry about it. Well. Liu King failed to make up her mind. However, catching sight of Zhao Feng's confident smile, she decided to tell them, Lili and I got into trouble. What sort of trouble? Zhang Han asked. Last night, when I was working, a man was drinking at the bar. People addressed him as elder brother. He molested me and grabbed my hand. On seeing what he did, Lili splashed a glass of wine on his face. He was so angry and cursed us, together with his friends. So Lili hit his head with a bottle and he bled. Liu King recited the incident. Is that all? Zhang Han shook his head and burst out laughing. Even Zhao Feng could not help laughing. Then he said, isn't this a trivial matter? No. Liu King became anxious, and she said hastily, the man called elder brother seemed to be of high status. Our supervisor, didn't dare to say anything. He was even kicked by elder brother, as he tried to stop him. Before elder brother left, he said that he would not let us go. After that, Day asked us to keep away for a few days, but Lili is ignoring him and intends to go back to work as usual. Will elder brother be there today? Zhao Feng asked. Probably, he has been here every day, these days. Liu King replied, Brother Zhang, please persuade Lili to stay away for a few days. Why should she hide? Zhang Han did not answer, while Zhao Feng smiled indifferently and said, "Don't worry, I'll come over tonight. What time do you go to work?" Luo King replied, "The bar opens at 7 o'clock. I'm starting work at 8:30, while Lili starts at 9 o'clock. Which venue are you working at?" Zhao Feng asked again. "Starry Sky Bar." Hearing Zhao Feng's words, Luo King was a little shocked. In general, people who came from underground forces would usually call the bar Avenue. Was this handsome man also from the underground forces? "Fine, I'll be there at 8 o'clock in the evening," Zhao Feng said, and did not ask any more questions. He planned to take his men over at night, to figure out who Elder Brother was.